The Delta State Ministry of Youth Development is an interesting one, considering that Delta State is multi-ethnic, multicultural, and multi-city, and the youths of Delta State are hyper-conscious. What is the policy direction, the policy template of this administration to ensure that these youths are positively carried along, developed for the good of the state and the society generally?
Well, unfortunately, just like you rightly posited that Delta State is multicultural, is multi-ethnic, etc. Unfortunately, development is not multicultural. Development is not multi-ethnic. Development is development. And what is development? Development is qualitative changes. And for those who feel that because development sometimes is interchangeably used with growth, development is not growth. Growth is quantitative, whereas growth is quantitative changes. Development is qualitative changes. The business of a typical or an occupant of a typical Ministry of Youth Development is to identify what the individual developmental deficiencies and challenges are among our youth, and appropriately fill those developmental challenges. What do we even mean by development in terms of what we do as a Ministry of Youth Development? It is more where there are deficiencies in relevant skills, where there are deficiencies in relevant knowledge. It is our responsibility to ensure that where such deficiencies exist, in terms of relevant skill acquisition, we feel it. In terms of insufficiency of knowledge in certain area, we feel it. So that after filling those deficiencies in terms of skill acquisitions and deficiency in terms of knowledge, the individuals involved becomes marketable, becomes employable, becomes attractive for jobs opportunity. In summary, that is what the business of a typical Ministry of Youth Development is all about. And while doing all of this, we must take exceptional cognizance of the fact that in our own peculiar case, there are 4 essential terminologies upon which our policy was erected and will be driven. One of such is poverty. The second one is ignorance. The third one is complacency. And the fourth one is negligence. What do I mean by poverty? Poverty in this context is lack of. There is something to be done, and you do not have what it takes to do it in terms of sufficiency of the relevant skills, sufficiency of the relevant knowledge. In that context, you are poor. And once you are poor, it is only those who are rich in that contest that will be choosing, that will be available to drive that process. And that is part of what, in terms of our developmental programs and policies, that we strive, the gap, part of the gap we strive to fill. The other one is negligence. Negligence is essentially attitudinal. Whereas you are very sufficient in terms of the required skills and knowledge, you are not poor. But the material time where you are expected to get those things done, you fail to do it. Then those who are able, who recognizes the need to get things done as at when it ought to be done, will do those things and be ahead of you. That is negligence. And in our developmental programs and policies, that is also a very critical areas we feel it's important that we develop our youth on. Like I said earlier, that is attitudinal. The other one is complacency. What is complacency? Complacency is when you have all the relevant skills and knowledge, and you are on top of your game, you are doing creditably well. Suddenly, that gets into your head, and you suddenly relaxed. The moment you relaxed, those whom you are ahead of, those who are striving to catch up with you, will not only catch up with you, but will overtake you. That in its own is also a problem. It's attitudinal. It's part of what we intend. In the course of our developmental programs and policies, we also wish to address in the life of every individual youth. Last, but not the least, is ignorance. Ignorance is total lack of it. Something is happening and you are not aware. In the environment in which you exist, what are the things that make someone to be unaware of what is happening in his or her environment? Because it's like it's commonly been said, what you don't know is bigger than you. So in the course of our developmental programs and policies, we want to see that our youths sufficiently acquire the relevant skills and knowledge so that when it mattered most, they will not be found wanting of ignorance. So it is these four cardinal areas that are the basis upon which we had erected our policy, which is the first ever policy of the Delta State Ministry of Youth Development. And this policy is coined the more YD-E7 series. The more, like you know, is taken from my principal's more agenda. And with emphasis on the arrow in that acronym, which is realistic reforms. We felt when we came on board that it was important for us as a Ministry of Youth Development and an appendage under the more agenda of my principal that we cannot run such a ministry without a policy. And therefore, there was need for us to take advantage of that realistic reform to review all previous policies and programs of our ministry and align them with the more agenda of our principal, so that there can be meaningful development for our youth, opportunity for our youth in order to have an enhanced peace and security. So at the end of the day, when we embark on that realistic reform, we came out with this more YD-E7 series. The E7 series is E7 series because it is made up of 7 componental parts, namely engagement, education, entrepreneurship, employment, easing of all forms of crimes and social vices, exchange and collaborative programs, and then entertainment. And what about the different 7 thematic areas? If you take the engagement, for example, because we feel that nobody has the monopoly of idea, nobody has the monopoly of knowledge, we feel it's important that having known what your own side of the divide is, you also need to hear from the other side to know what the other side has in content. If you don't engage the other side, how do you know what they have in content? Because nobody has the monopoly of idea. So it becomes imperative for us as a Ministry of Youth Development and as a componental part of our policy to see how at all time, having known what our side is, to always engage the other side. Engagement can be a minor, it can be micro, it can be mega, it can be major. It can be vertical, it can be horizontal. So all of that is intended to strike a balance in order for everybody that is in this business of youth development to be on the same page. So closely following the engagement team is the educational aspect of the policy. Under this education, we feel that for us to have a very comprehensive development of our youth, their development should not be limited to entrepreneurship alone. Should not be limited to only skill acquisition. Because there are other aspects of our youth development that also require development. And that is why we had to further segment it. So under education, for example, that is the area where we are going to identify and look at our youths that have potentials in oratorial and literary skills. Like I usually tell people, Ebuka of Big Brother Naija live all his life through MCship. That is oratorial. There is also a dearth, what I consider as a dearth of literary activities, literary work in our environment. And interestingly, there is abundance of literary and oratorial talents in Delta State. And that is why the more reasons why we cannot be too over-emphatic about entrepreneurship, because there are other areas of developmental needs of our youth. So every educational related area of our youth development will be handled and addressed under the educational thematic area. The other one is entrepreneurship. I do not need to emphasize that because that is what is commonly everywhere. So that takes us to the fourth one, which is employment. We have stated severally and repeatedly here that any of our developmental program that will not take our youth to development, to employment, is a jamboree. No wonder. Annually, government at different level, MDAs, spends hundreds of millions in nairas and dollars and pounds on entrepreneurial developments of our youth that eventually translate after the starter pack. What next? Experience has shown that even at the venue where the starter packs have been issued, some of our youth sell those starter packs there. So the question is, after the starter pack, what next? So it is in the course of our developmental programs, we want to fill that gap, that after the starter pack, between where you get the starter pack and become sustainably employed, whether self-employment or you are employed by, there is a gap to be filled, and that is the gap we have offered in the course of our developmental program to fill, so that for every youth we remove from the street at the end of our developmental program, they don't go back there. To all of that, the mentorship, the business training on business developmental plans and every other things, all of that will be mobilized to fill that gap, so that for every youth we remove from the street, they will be sustained. So all of that will be handled under the employment thematic area. The next one is exchange and collaborative programs. Exchange and collaborative program, because we feel that Delta State Ministry of Youth Development do not know it all, did not have it all. Therefore, if there are other MDAs in the state here, like we already know, Ministry of Agric, IAGEP, Office of the Job Creation, Science and Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Oil and Gas, and every other MDAs, both state and federal, or in other states that are into youth development. We don't want to throw our eyes off them. We want to know what is happening in those environments and collaborate with them to strengthen them, so that we can have more value for our youth. We also intend to, through this exchange and collaborative program, to mine all the NGOs outside the shores of Nigeria that have budgets annually, periodically, for youth development, and get our fair share of those budgets for the development of our youth in Delta State. Recently, a few days ago, we were in Lagos at the office of Tony Elumelu Foundation. It was through these components of exchange and collaborative program that took us there. In matters of days, they are expected to officially communicate to us on all their developmental programs to enable us study say and appropriately partner with them in order to bring more value to the issue of developments of our youth. So all of that will be handled under the exchange and collaborative program, because we feel that our ministry cannot do it alone. The next one is easing of all forms of crimes and social vices. Hardly do you go anywhere in this world when the issue of crime and social vices are mentioned, you do not say it is the youth. It is the youth, because that is this demography, that is segment of our society where you have the most energetic people. If this energy is deployed for good things, better. But if they are deployed to the negative end, it can be very catastrophic. So we intend to, as a Ministry of Youth Development, that is why we cannot be too over-emphatic about entrepreneurship. Because our youth who are victims of these social vices and crimes. So all of that will be handled under that thematic area. Then the last but not the least is entertainment. Anything you talk about entertainment in any part of this world, Delta State inclusive, is essentially about the youth. So we cannot talk about, as a Ministry of Youth Development, talk about the issue of development of youth without identifying those of our youth who has potentials in different areas of entertainment. Identify them and develop them accordingly. So, in summary, this is what the more YD-E7 series, what it is all about. And it is the vertebral column of our youth policy. So interestingly, all of these have been budgeted for, defended before the Status of Assembly, passed by the Delta Status of Assembly, and assented to by our governor. So another way of saying that is that we are good to go. Then, it's also important that I mention this, that for every of our developmental programs, we prefer to do a bottom-top approach, not a top-bottom approach. We do not want to sit down in our office to say that this is what the youth must learn. They must do wedding. They must do carpentry. It is these tendencies to always want to do top-bottom approach that makes these youth, when they are recruited into these programs, and they become reluctant. Because in their mind, what you have asked them to do is not what they actually want to do. Part of the reasons why at various closing ceremony where starter packs are given out, these starter packs are sold. So in our own case, we don't want to do a top-bottom approach. Rather, we want to do a bottom-top approach. Once we get the relevant approvals, once we get the approval from relevant authorities, we are going to release our forms for the youth to voluntarily tell us what their deficiencies are, which area of life they want to live their life, which area of life they want to be developed. And having done that, by filling those forms, we intend to also go around the 25 local governments of the state, local government by local government, to profile this youth, so that having heard from them, we want them to convince us to say this is actually how they want to live their life, how they want to be developed. Because when it is done voluntarily in that manner, any seed planted on that fertile soil will definitely germinate. So the same thing is applicable to master trainers, all those who have been saying they want to train our youth, they want to do this. In the full glare of the public, in your local government, you will be offered the opportunity, the privilege to come and exhibit how you want to train our youth. Show your skills. If you qualified, if you merit it, we'll give it to you. For those two who have raw talents to be there, whether in singing, whether in dancing, whether in literature, you will exhibit it publicly there. Everybody in your local government will see you and identify you. Join us to identify you. And once you are spotted, we'll pick you up and we'll go. So our policy is going to be run on the basis of bottom-top approach, not top-bottom approach. Of course, there's also the components of stick and carrot approach. For those who are on the negative radar of our policy and are willing to come and get developed through the carrot approach, they will be welcome. For those that wants to perpetuate themselves along the negative radar, of course, the stick approach will be deployed. So, in summary, this is how we intend to run the policy. Additionally, we have also stated unequivocally that our approach to the development of our youth in this ministry is going to be scientific. And that is why we have gotten the policy as a starting point. The second one after the policy is to develop a very qualitative data bank. Do not forget that this demography is very sensitive. The only way we can talk to ourselves and talk to others in the course of the developments of our youth is by talking to statistics, is by being empirical, is by being scientific. For example, if we are asked that what is the unemployment rate of Delta State, we say we don't know. What is the current population of Delta State? We say we don't know. What percentage of that population is youth? We say we don't know. What population of the youth are female? What population are female? We say we don't know. What population of our youth are involved in crime? We say we don't know. What population of our youth are in correctional center? We say we don't know. When we say we don't know all of this, it means as a ministry, we are not prepared for the developments of our youth. That is why we choose to want to go empirical. So as I'm addressing you now, we're already mining all of these figures, all of this data, because that is what we are going to mobilize in developing our data bank, so that at a glance, anybody from anywhere can understand where we are and where we are going to. And that is the basis upon which we will assess ourselves, to know whether we are progressing, we are actually developing the youth in every of these areas or not. The last but not the least is the establishment of what we consider as a youth resource and development center. That youth resource and development center has already been budgeted for. It's going to be through a PPP arrangement. And it is intended that the youth development centers will have 270 apartments, modeled after the 270 wards in the state, where it is intended that when it comes to fruition, not less than 5 youth from each of these wards will be recruited, will be trained by each of the brand that will be mobilized to take over these 270 wards, 270 apartments, to train and recruit them and use them to provide services, to sell goods and goods and products for them, and in return get salaries or wages, and also contribute significantly to the IGRO index of the state. This also has already been budgeted for. In summary, this is how we intend to fare this year.
I'm trying to articulate the programs and policies you put together, or you are still putting together. And it's striking me that what you're doing is novel. It's not as if there is a ready-made template from where you're drawing your inference. I would like to ask, are there efforts to ensure that these policies, these programs are replicated at the local government levels and to the grassroots in such a way that it will be different from what we usually hear of government programs that is on paper and hanging in the air? What is being done to ensure that these programs are actionable and of optimal benefit and impact to Deltans and to the community?
Yes, like I have told you that we're going to go around the 25 local governments of the states. Besides the issue of profiling, it will be an opportunity at every of those local governments to properly and adequately give all of such informations to all our youth in all of these local government areas. In the past how many weeks, I had also gone through to different media houses to educate our youth on the existence of this policy. We're also deploying various social media platforms too in doing all of that. So we do not feel that the best thing to do as a Minister of Youth that is here in Asaba to sit down in the office and be doing all of this without reaching out to the critical stakeholders, the principal beneficiaries of this program, so that they can be able to hear us and on their own after hearing us, take relevant decisions. For example, we have declared every Wednesday as Day of Technical Presentations, so that if you have talent, you are a master trainer, you have anything to offer that you feel is unique, come before our technical team here, come and do the presentation. If you meet our standard, we'll accept you. If you don't meet our standard, we're not going to drive you away. We just simply ask you to go and improve on what you have done so that you can come back and meet up with our standards.
With all these facts in, and with you as the commissioner of this ministry, it would be interesting to have you give us behind the curtain insights, if you may, of the governor's exact mandate, his exact charge to you. And to you on a personal note, how do you see Delta State in the next 10 years in the light of this?
How do I see Delta in the next 10 years? We better situated. If you ask how do I see Delta in the next 4 years, which of course certainly will graduate because of the very good work that my principal is doing and the love, the extent of acceptability by the generalities of Deltas to graduate to the next 8 years. The road that Jilo Beggars is building in Warri today, the indication within a period of 5, 6, 7 months, these things are already happening. Every 4 years tenure has a total of about 48 months. In less than 8 months, in less than 7 months, you're already seeing this happening. So proportionately, you do not need to be told that greater and better things are going to happen in the life cycle of the first 4 years and the greatest in the next cycle of the next 4 years. That is in terms of infrastructural development. In terms of peace and security, enhanced peace and security, we do not need to be told. For example, in Warri, the month of October, November, December are usually the worst period of security challenges. We just had our Christmas and New Year celebrated recently, preceded by the relevant October and November month. No fly. There was no single fly of any security challenge in that environment. Because my principal do not put mic on his mouth to stand on the podium to start saying this, do not mean that it should be taken, it should not be appreciated. That is an indication of what the future O's for us in terms of peace and security. What about human capital development? The quality of these programs, all the ones, developmental programs, empowerment programs that are bound in this year's budget, the employment he has done, the palliative he has given, etc. These are all indications of the quality of enhanced life that Deltans will live under this administration in the next 8 years. So, even the blind, like I said, they're already seeing what is happening. The deaf, they are hearing it. So, and these are the things you see when, according to Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2, when you have the righteous on the throne.
The community youths. I believe there is no community in Delta State without youth body. Will I call them youth organizations or youth associations? Effectively, the responsibility of these youth associations falls squarely on your desk. I would like to ask, how much of importance are these associations to you and your ministry, and what will be your charge to them?
Yeah, one of the first things we did when we were sworn in, I think we were sworn in about exactly on the 22nd of August this year. And I resumed office on the 24th of August 2023, not this year. The first thing I did was to set up 2 committees. The first committee was saddled with the responsibility to map out all the critical youth groups in the state, because we need to know whom our stakeholders are, so that nobody, in line with the more agenda of my principal, in line with the inclusiveness of the more agenda of my principal, so that no group will be left out. When the report of that committee was turned in, it was obvious that there were different categorization of youth in the state. There were those that are faith-based, those that are community inclined, those that are ethnic inclined, those that the National Youth Council of Nigeria, those are professional bodies and all of that. So all of that has been able to guide us as to the kind of engagement we deploy when reaching out to these different categorizations. So another way of saying that is that we know that there are different categories of youth in Delta State, and all of that is in the bracket of what we are doing.
Before we put the drones back home, as the coordinating leader of Delta Youths, what would be your advice to the youths of Delta State, home and abroad?
My final advice to them is that they should be seen at all times to be peaceful, because there is no development that can thrive in any environment that is chaotic. The second one is that they should reciprocate this great gesture of my principal, Right Honorable Elder Sheriff Francis Rowodo Borore, the Executive Governor of the state, for all the superlative things he has done within this short period of time, by always supporting him. Because like it is commonly being said, to whom much is given, much is expected.
As we look forward to the success of the programs Delta State government have in stock for the youth of Delta State, I want to thank you immeasurably, Comrade, and Honorable Commissioner for Youth Development Delta State, for the time given. Hopefully that I will do this again often.
Thank you for the privilege of having me.